What is up, all my dorks, nerds, geeks, and gamers? It's your host, Ghost here, and you're watching a brand new episode of Wet Ink. Today we're going to be talking about Part 5 and the final issue of the Spider-Man Spider Shadow mini-arc that is happening in the Marvel What If series. First off, I gotta say this series has been amazing, but last time we left off, the symbiote had escaped the Oscorp Tower that Peter, Human Torch, and not Oscorp, but the Fantastic Four Tower that Peter, MJ, and Human Torch were inside of, trying to reach the top to stop Mr. Fantastic. And last we seen, MJ and Human Torch were confronting Mr. Fantastic, while Spider-Man fought Ben Grimm, who knocked a hole in the wall, and then found out that the Avengers had been turned into symbiotes. So now it's Peter versus the Avengers as symbiotes, and then Human Torch and MJ versus Mr. Fantastic. So we start this issue off very simply with Spider-Man trying to figure out what to do right away with the Avengers, who are now symbiote versions of the Avengers. So he's kind of worried in that first panel that we show right away. Then we cut to MJ and Mr. Fantastic. Last we saw, MJ had shot Mr. Fantastic through the chest with a literal handgun. So it really didn't do much. We find out he's not dead or anything like that. But there is now a hole in the suit that can be used for other purposes, such as symbiote coming out or something going inside the suit. So that's cool to see as well. We cut to Human Torch kind of saving MJ, grabbing her, and flying away. And you actually get this really, really cool shot of Mr. Fantastic's arms kind of flailing out of the tower, trying to catch him. And it's very cool, but very terrifying at the same time, because it can definitely grow sizes with the symbiote. We then cut to the Avengers and Mr. Fantastic now chasing MJ and Human Torch through the city. So giving Spider-Man a chance to sneak into the Fantastic Four's lab and to try to find a way to figure out if this is like all controlled through one symbiote or if they're all independent symbiotes or how that works. We then cut to Mrs. Fantastic, or the Invisible Woman, who's with her son Benjamin, who she is trying to save or put away in a taxi and send somewhere else. Just then she notices the Avengers flying through the sky with Mr. Fantastic. She decides to step in and buy Human Torch some time because he ends up getting hit by Cap's shield and he ends up dropping MJ, and she ends up saving MJ. And there's also a panel right after this where she does this really cool move where she actually does her burst bubble, her invisible bubble, and just knocks all these Avengers and Mr. Fantastic into this building. It's a very beautiful shot here down at the very bottom. So yeah, she basically stops them in their tracks for a second while Peter's still looking for some sort of cure and to figure out a way out of this. So yeah, but he figures out a plan and he tells them to keep buying him time. At the same time, Thor attacks the Invisible Woman, so she goes down, and then Mr. Fantastic goes to finish her off for whatever reason or turn her. At that time, Peter intervenes and he gets surrounded by Mr. Fantastic and all these other Avengers who are now symbiotes. So it's a very scary situation for Peter to be in, but we've seen him get out of worse, and he's done worse in this series. At that point, the symbiote decides to join Peter again and leave Mr. Fantastic, but it decides to kill Mr. Fantastic as it leaves his body, and this really makes Peter mad. He ends up leading the symbiote back through the lab, leading it off and away of the bodies and then through the lab, where we find out that it is not Peter Parker who is leading the symbiote. It was Human Torch, and he was using the thing that made the thing look like a human being. The Human Torch used it to look like Peter Parker, and led the symbiote down into that lab, so then he can use his fire powers and kaboom and incinerate it right then and there. Is this the end of the symbiote? I really don't know, because here's the thing. We've seen this same ploy happen whenever Eddie Brock and J. Jonah Jameson tried to do it on the symbiote earlier in issue 3. So to see the same kind of story beat happen again, it's a little bit confusing. But hey, it gets the job done. The symbiote gets fried, as far as we know. We cut to Mary Jane and Spider-Man, who are far away, kind of looking at the explosion and kind of admiring it, happy that it's kind of over, and that they're both alive. But then we cut back to the Fantastic Four with Sue Storm kind of going back to Mr. Fantastic's body, and you get this really somber shot of the Thing, Mr. Fantastic, and the Human Torch and the Invisible Woman kind of looking over his dead body for the sacrifice he made. So yeah, it's a really deep story, a lot of sad stuff going on, but that's about it. I wish there was more to tell in this storyline, which there may be with the way this ends. But I'm just very sad that this is the last issue, and it very much feels like a wrap up of everything. We then cut to Eddie Brock and J. Jonah Jameson, who are still kind of feeling guilty about the things they've done as bad people when they teamed up together. So they decide that whatever happens, they're going to go down together. If that's good or bad, we don't know yet. We then cut to the Avengers and Peter Parker, who are on trial for the symbiote taking them over and the things they did with the symbiotes, such as Peter Parker killing all those villains in the previous issues. So he gets amended from that because the Avengers kind of tell them, no, we were also possessed and we couldn't control ourselves, so we understand. So he gets free of charge. They go to Mr. Fantastic's funeral, and while there, the Invisible Woman tells Peter Parker that she doesn't blame him for his death, and that she actually wants him to join the team and that they'll fix this together. And she hands him a Fantastic Four badge. So Peter Parker is now officially a member of the Fantastic Four at the end of this story, at the end of this what if scenario, and you get a nice shot here of Peter in the new Fantastic Four team. But that is not where it ends. This is the last issue of the whole series, but there could be a second series if we're lucky, because there is an epilogue here, which they rarely do with their Marvel What If series. We actually get Kingpin, who last we saw was beaten to a pulp by Spider-Man, so his face is pretty disfigured from that. As you can see here, he's got a mask on, his eye is blind for the most part, probably both eyes, and he's got bruising and scarring all around his skull where it looks like it's shattered. So yeah, he gets a hold of the symbiote that did possess Mr. Fantastic, and we don't know what he plans to do with it, but we know it's probably not good. But yeah, that's how it ends there. The final issue of the Spider-Man Spider Shadow. Very awesome story, very cool storyline. I love the dark beats. I love how it redeemed Spider-Man in the end. And it did everything in a unique fashion that I haven't seen before in a storyline, in a Spider-Man storyline. They twisted a lot of things, they turned a lot of things, and it was very exciting. I highly recommend Spider-Man Spider Shadow to you guys. If you guys have not read any of the issues, I highly recommend it to you guys. It's very entertaining, very good. I give this one a 9 out of 10 because the action's good, and the twist with the Human Torch and the death of Mr. Fantastic being very impactful, and the epilogue setting up future stories has me very excited. So a 9 out of 10 for this issue. As a series overall, I give it a 8 out of 10 because there was there was a few things that slogged a little bit and was kind of dragged down, such as the flames being the only way to stop the symbiote twice, both times. So that was a little bit contrived, and they kind of used the same story beat again in the same storyline, which is kind of disappointing. But other than that, very good series, very excited for it. I hope you guys enjoyed these Wet Ink episodes. Stay tuned for the Star Wars War of the Bounty Hunters episodes, and we're going to continue with the Amazing Spider-Man episodes and future Wet Ink episodes. Let me know down below what you guys think of Spider-Man Spider Shadow. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. And as always, guys, keep it right here on Dorkston. I've been your host, Ghost. Adios.